What's a gap analysis? It is the difference between present state and desired state. And obviously, desired state would be much higher than present state. It's very, very rare that present state is much higher than desired state. Then जरूरत नहीं ना gap analysis की, right? So this is done for all functions, all departments, etc. And you get into a whole lot of issues. Okay, this is where the gaps are, right? You might end up with many issues. So what's the next step? You can't address all of them at once. You have to get into priorities and what is important currently. Okay. Take the example of, let's say, ICICI Bank. When ICICI Bank did a lot of gap analysis, they found huge gaps between what people are and where they should be. But what is the priority currently? It is more behavioral of how to handle customers. Technical skills can take a back seat because today they've got technology to address a lot of technical skills. Today they have technology, so technology would take care of a lot of the gaps. So priority today is behavioral, where ICICI Bank is spending a huge amount of money in training people in dealing with customers, dealing with angry people, etc., etc. Because that is the key for them, it's a priority. Obviously, then they'll have to get into other priorities like technical trainings, etc. And for that, they are doing a lot of e-learning, which will come to slightly later. So, but the intervention physically, where a lot of money is being spent, is the communication and behavioral. Technical skills, they are spending a lot of money, but they are trying to use technology by e-learning and internal modules, where a person can sit at his desk and also do it. Right? But again, before you get into the actual training, design and delivery, you have to find out, okay, why are these gaps occurring? Okay, why are these gaps occurring? What is the biggest reason for the gap normally? What is normally the biggest reason for the gap? Lack of knowledge itself. No? It's lack of knowledge itself. Okay, is the biggest cause, because your education system has not taught you that. Simple. But what is the second biggest cause? So again, that's lack of knowledge. No? What is the second biggest reason? Normally, in many cases, the wrong role model behavior by immediate supervisors. Because what do people follow? Their bosses. So the bosses themselves have been behaving wrongly or doing things wrongly. So obviously, the juniors also get trained wrongly. No? Okay. So there again, cause of problem and opportunities. So should I start with the lower level or higher level is again a cause itself. Then I don't change my bosses. I might train junior people, but they'll again follow the bosses. If the bosses are doing things wrong, you again have a problem, right? And then you get into possible solutions and opportunities for growth, right? Now, obviously, as I said, one is education, which is done at the college level, etc., etc. Then you have training, but now the shift is even more dramatic. So it's from training to learning, right? So education is the first part, training is the second part, third level is learning, right? And in learning, the most important is the principle of motivation, reinforcement, punishment or extinction. So how many of you remember your first year OB courses? So what motivates and reinforces? You would have done that famous Pavlov experiments, no? Kiya ki nahi kiya hai? So what is this Pavlov experiments? See, if something is done rightly, a reward is given. If something is done wrongly, punishment is given. So based on the experience, motivation happens whether to do or not to do, which in turn leads to learning, right? So example, what was the Palo experience all about? That a particular animal is given a shock if he goes nearby something, so it learns not to go there. But if it goes to some other area, it's given something to eat. So what does it learn? To do the positive thing so that it gets something to eat. The moment it does something negative, it gets a shock, which is unpleasant. So same thing is used in learning. Can I reinforce desired behaviors by the right rewards? Can I prevent undesired behaviors by punishment? And the last is what? The threat of losing a job. Extension is nothing but threat of losing a job, right? So in learning, what is highlighted is the positive effects and rewards of doing something right, which is reinforced every time. If you do something right, you get more of it, right? Same with punishment. If you do something wrong, you are punished. If you do it again, you are punished more. And if you don't improve, you are sacked, which is the extinction. Again, a major part of the dilemma is, should I give the entire learning at one part or should I do it in parts? And this again is a dilemma, because to do the entire whole might require a lot of resources and time which may not be available, right? And then we also use something called as a learning curve in learning. So anybody aware how a learning curve looks like? Okay, this is how a learning curve would look like. Initially, it is slow because there's a resistance. Okay, in learning, initially the learning is slow because there's a resistance. What's the biggest challenge in learning? It's basically unlearning, which requires time. So unless you unlearn, you can't learn something new. So this time is required for the unlearning, and then you start the learning part. The moment unlearning happens, learning happens quickly, right? But then after a particular level, it actually drops because there's something called as a fatigue factor. So you keep on doing something new, but over time you get bored with it, you get tired with it, and you tend to slip back to some of the earlier norms, right? So learning actually comes down, and this is the time when you actually need to give more learning. That's why today whole learning is not normally emphasized. You give a part, let it build up, there would be a fatigue factor, there's a fair degree of improvement, and then you go to the next level. Clear? Now again, each person would have different ways in which he would learn. So we're going to look at largely 4 learning styles, as we call it. The first type of learning style is an accommodator, who learns more by doing and feeling it. Okay. The second type of learning is a diverger, where he doesn't do it himself, but he observes and feels it. There's a converger, who is doing and thinking, and the last assimilator, who is observing and thinking and assimilating it from somebody else, right? Normally learning would be a combination of all 4, right? Now if you look at typically learning cycle, how it happens. So in learning there will be normally 4 stages. What is the first stage? There is unconscious incompetence. You're not even aware that I'm not aware. Okay, you're not even aware that I'm not aware. But something triggers that yes, I need to know this. So you become conscious that you are incompetent. Okay. So you do something about it and start learning it. Over time you actually become competent on it, so you are consciously competent. But with practice what happens? You become unconsciously competent. Let me give you a simple example. When you are young, you didn't even you were aware that I need to learn how to drive a four-wheeler. So you are consciously incompetent. It didn't matter whether you knew how to drive a four-wheeler or not. Right? But then you realize that after I come to college, I might join a job, I need to know how to drive. So you are conscious now that I don't know how to do it. So what do? You take some action. You join maybe a driving class or whatever. And first 2-3 months, how do you drive? You are actually conscious. Which gear am I putting in? I look at the mirror to see whether somebody is behind or not. Right? After 7-8 months of driving, what happens? It becomes the second part. You don't even think, you just drive, right? So you're unconsciously competent. Nobody tells you कि अरे वो अभी second gear डालना है, third. It just happens. You don't have to look behind. You realize there could be a vehicle behind simply by the feel. So you're unconsciously competent, right? And to reach the fourth level requires all four. For some things you need to do and feel. For some things you need to observe and feel. Sometimes you need to do and think, and sometimes you need to observe and think. Same, let's say, look in driving, Initially you are actually doing it, feeling how to drive. Quite often when you're sitting behind in the driving school, so you're looking at somebody else's driving, you're observing and feeling what will I do, right? Typically after some days with the driver or the instructor you're alone, so you're only doing and thinking, am I doing it right, wrong, right? And finally towards the end of the class you're only observing and thinking, if this happens what will I do? If this happens what will I do? So learning happens through a combination of these four styles, right? And then I said these are 4 levels you go through. Now when you look at training per se, there are 3 aspects. One could be a trainer-centered training where you got an expert who would give particular training. There could be a target audience-centric and there could be a performance-centric approach. Now again, it depends on what training you need to give and why, right? Let's take something like quality. It will be more focused towards the trainer because of his expertise. But take something like a shop floor, you are supposed to operate certain machines. It will be more learning centered. But take example of, let's say, sales, where you are supposed to deliver more sales. It will be more performance centered. How do I get more sales with lesser calls? So if you look at the learning process, so what happens in the process and what is the event? First is there's an expectancy where you inform the learners about the objectives. Then there's a perception that you would have which would emphasize what the training is going to give. Then there's a working storage, which is the amount you would like to train in 2 days or 3 days, whatever. There's semantic coding. What is semantic coding? Your mind is getting coded by the training. Okay. Which is giving guidance of what to do right, wrong. There's a storage that happens through the training. Retrieval. So there'll be cues given. If you want to remember this, this is what you will do. Right? Then you try to generalize, can I use this training in other areas? And finally, there's a feedback and performance, which is nothing but gratifying. Learner feels I've learned it. Clear? Now, there is a author called as Kolb who says learning cycle happens through 4 areas. First is you actually gain concrete experience. So actually go through something. Now based on that experience, you would reflect and observe it. Based on that observation and thinking, you would conceptualize this is what happens, right? And then with the learning, you actually get into more experimentation, right? So when you look at training, the basic elements for designing training are what? Identify the needs, focus more on the target audience, try to get into measurable objectives. It should be goal-oriented and time-bound. It can't be open-ended training, 10, 15 days. It has to be 2 days every week or whatever, no? Time-bound. You have to take into account resource constraints and availability. Availability of people as well as the trainer. You need to give the objectives to the trainer as well as the learners. Conduct the actual learning activities. These are the methodology, and finally deliver and evaluate. What are the aspects you look at into the training program? One is the training going to be credible? What is going to be a level of commitment of the trainees? When would trainees have more commitment? When would trainees have more commitment? When you show them the positive reinforcement through rewards. That if you do this and implement this, this is going to lead to, then the commitment increases. Then you also have to realize that the moment I conduct a training run, there is a risk of time of many people as well as resources being consumed. Okay. A major challenge for training is, am I able to make the participants unlearn first? Because without unlearning, learning is not going to happen. And also trainer, to what extent he can give attention and is he flexible based on the group. That's why today when there is a behavioral training etc., normally batches are between 20 to 25 because that gives enough time and attention of the trainer. With technical training, you can have 100 in a class. If it's a management functional training, you would have small groups of 8 to 10 only because that requires a lot of attention by the trainer to be given individually to each trainer. But let's say a typical technical training like what we are going through today, where I'm just explaining the broad concepts, you can have 100 people in the class. Clear? Okay, now principles of a good training program. First is the system has to be validated and you need to have constant correction. No training design is perfect. So you need to keep on validating it. Important is immediately after training you need to have a feedback from the participants as well as the trainer. That gap could lead to erroneous feedback. Even if the training module is designed, you need to tweak it to the needs of every batch. Okay. The training has to be designed where the learner needs to respond proactively. So you need to make it interactive, etc. There could be errors like technical definitions might be wrongly quoted, etc. So to identify and eliminate errors. Most important is identify correct audience. Because if the audience itself is wrongly identified, training is going to be a disaster. Every time you conduct, you need to review the flow, material, time required and nature of the training program. Because the same training might require some other method with some other participant group. You again need to every time you do it, test for validity. Look at the cost benefit analysis required, infrastructure needed, dates to be finalized. And an important decision for many companies is whether we should give it internally or get an external trainer. Okay. Now we'll come to when we would have external trainer and when we would have an internal trainer. And then you need to mobilize the entire participants, trainer, infrastructure to deliver the training. Now delivery could be personal like we are having now classroom or seminars. Training could be delivered through textbooks, manuals, guides. Today, a large number of companies are using something called CBT, computer-based training or web-based training. There is distance learning or a combination of all these. Now, in a classroom training, any good training program should have a combination of all these. What are icebreakers? It makes the participants comfortable. So, we'll have a small activity lasting 5 to 10 minutes where people become comfortable, open up. So, it's called an icebreaker. Then we'll have leadership games, skill games, right? So, we'll have activities that test the leadership qualities of the participants as well as the skill games. There will be activities and games which test communication. Also role plays. Role plays actually help you to analyze a situation well. There could be lateral thinking case studies where you have to think radically opposite. Then case studies is something you would have all gone through in your MBA course. Look at a situation and analyze it. There could be simulation. Simulation are nothing but let's say computer-based games which would simulate a particular environment so that you have to take actions. The moment you take action, there's a result which is there and you again have to take action. In many cases, you also need cross-cultural training where you have workers with managers, different regional people coming together for training, etc. Some of the other methods of training are giving assignments or tutorials, demonstrating a particular method. On-the-job training is quite common at the entry level. There could be field visits. Projects could be given to participants so which they go and get into. Coaching is normally one-to-one where you have a mentor assigned to you, or you could have something called as labs. Okay, labs are more used for the behavioral part, where you go through, normally 8 to 10 people with a trained psychologist would go through a laboratory of, let's say, emotional intelligence or maybe negotiation skills or whatever. Now, in a training program also you need to judge the effectiveness and evaluation, right? So, one of the most popular methods of evaluation training is something called as Kirkpatrick model. So, what is the reaction of the participants? What have they learned? What are the changes in the behavior that have occurred? And over the next 90 days, 6 months and 1 year, what are the results in the changes? Okay, let's look at another aspect of training which is called as career planning. Now, career planning is something which many companies would get into because they want to retain people. Now, obviously, nobody would like to join as a GT and remain a GT for life, right? So, obviously, he needs to understand that maybe after 3 years, I might become assistant manager. After 5 to 7 years, I'll become a manager. After 8 years, maybe a section head. Maybe 15 years later, I could become a AVP, possibly. So, in career planning, you need to look at what are the careers that could be possible. So, you need to assess, you need to explore, make decisions for different participants and train and educate them towards those careers. Now, obviously, what are the new methods that are being used? As I said, computer-based programs. Something called as modular programs, where people would go through modules of programs. Action-centered learning, where people are actually put on the field. There could be competency-based training. There are agencies that do what is known as assessment centers and competency-based centers. NLP is a new field. Any idea what NLP stands for? Neuro-linguistic. So what is done here? You're training the mind or running a software in the mind so that your mind starts behaving in a particular way, right? And something which is becoming very popular today is e-learning, okay? Okay, we'll be covering counseling in the afternoon part where we have PMS also, no? So I'm going to request Chaitanya to take over now with his module.
Okay. How many of you have work experience? I think 8 to 10 of you have work experience, right? Can you please raise your hand? Okay, great. Uh, okay, in a typical company, can somebody let me know what is the hierarchy? Where it starts and where it ends? One by one, please. Not audible? It is better? Good. So, can anyone explain what is the typical hierarchy in an organization? Anyone, I mean. Labor and highest could be a president, right? So, I mean, in between there will be a manager, engineer, everything, right? So, do all have same compensation? No, right? Do all have same compensation components? No, right? So, that is what we are going to learn today, okay? But what comes to your mind when we say a compensation? Okay, good. I'm sorry. Okay. Great. Okay, good. Correct, right? Correct, right? That's what you will be paid while working, right? It's not NGO where you are going to work and earn the salary. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Correct. Okay. So let's see what is the definition of a compensation. So what is a compensation? Is something which you get an exchange of your efforts and ideas. A compensation is all form of financial return, tangible services, employee. Okay. Now, what are the typical forms of pay? I mean, there will be some base wages applicable to you. There will be some merit based. There will be some incentive and service benefit. Okay. So there are typically two approaches followed for the compensation. Okay. So one is traditional and other is total reward. Okay. So what is the difference between two? So in a case of traditional approach, the compensation is a primary base pay. Okay. And in case of total reward, the variable pay is your base pay. Okay. So as we have seen here, what are the different forms of pay? This is a base wages and a merit. Okay. So in case of traditional, which is mostly followed by, I would say 99% of the companies follow the traditional approach, wherein your base salary will help you to go into specific role. Okay. So your salary will be assigned to a basic role and you will be attached to that. While in case of total reward, the variable pay is your, I would say, role identifier. Okay. And in case of traditional pay, up to some categories there will be a fixed pay. There won't be a variable pay assigned with reference to company performance, sales data or anything. Most likely senior management will be more susceptible to the variable payment, not the junior management. Okay. Whenever you will go to the job, okay, so you are most likely to get into the mid management or senior to or junior to mid management, right? So where you can expect more fixed salary and lesser variable salary. Okay. So most likely Indian companies follow the traditional approach. So what, as you already pointed out, what are the typical components? First is your compensation, like basic plan, wages, salaries, variable pay is your bonus, incentives, stock options. Apart from that, these are like you will get it on your hand in terms of cash. Okay, so there will be some component which are non-cash, but company is paying cash to somebody on your behalf. So that is your benefit. So you will get a health cover, maybe insurance related to life or disability. Your leave is part of your benefit. Okay, so you can very well judge that company giving 24 holidays is giving more benefit than companies giving 10 holidays. Okay, retirement and pension plan. Nowadays, this plan, this particular line item is most likely removed from all the companies. Nobody is currently trying to tie retirement plan with your compensation. The other aspect is most likely the employees will live within 3 to 5 years. Okay, they never go to that superannuation stage in a particular company. The most important aspect nowadays coming up is educational assistance. So you will be completing your MBA, you will go to your job. Okay, still you will require to have some additional knowledge. Okay, so it may come in the form of your training given by the company, but apart from that you may like to do something on your own. Okay, that is something educational assistance provided by the company. And other aspect is work-life support. Most likely you will be working 8 to 8 or 8 to 6. Okay, but company mostly, company do understand that there should be a work-life balance. Okay, so they will create some events, or they will organize some events. They will give you some coupons. So that is related to work-life balance. Okay. Now third aspect is performance and talent management. Okay. So obviously once somebody join, obviously he will expect there should be a growth in my salary, growth in my role. Right. That is something related to performance and talent management. So there will be once you join, there will be a KRA assigned to you. So some companies say KRA, somebody says goal, or there are different names assigned to it. But you will be given I would say a goal which is to be attained after specific period of time. Okay, that is your performance appraisal. Okay, so there will be a review. So a review is something where you will be monitored over a period of time to understand whether you are on track, off track, whether you need some level of assistance to meet that goal. And other aspect is talent management, like you will be training, HR development, career planning and succession planning. So career planning you must be aware, right, where you want to go after some days, or where you want to reach after 5 years, 10 years, what skill set you need to acquire. But do you know what is mean by succession planning? Any idea? Okay, that is one aspect. But the other most important aspect is, let's say you are at a stage 1, you go to stage 2, right? It doesn't mean that there is no job for stage 1. There should be somebody at stage 1, right? So let's say a president is expected to retire after 2 years, right? After 2 years, there should be somebody ready to take that role as a president. So that's a succession planning. Okay, so in terms of philosophy, if you are a part of organization, being a part of organization, being a regular employee, you will be entitled to some benefit. Okay, that's your right to ask from company. Okay, and there will be some benefits which are from the performance perspective. How are you performing? Okay, so that these are the two extreme in which your compensation will be lying. Okay. So in case of entitlement, the seniority based pay, which most likely happens with the case of government employees. So the more years of work experience, more is the pay. Okay. There could be across the board rise, pay scale. I mean, for especially in case of government, there will be a pay scale rise per annually. Okay. But in case of private companies, it will be most likely to be tied with the company performance. Okay. So let's say you have a base salary of 10,000 when you join. Let's assume number. Okay. So next year, whether that will be 11,000, 15,000, 20,000, that will be related to the company performance. So that's a pay scale. Okay. But while in case of government, there will be a base salary to given to you. Let's say it's a 10,000. So there will be fixed increment to you. Okay. So pay scale annual rise could be a two ways. It could be in case of private companies based on the company performance, and in case of government, it's a fixed pay rise. Okay, I mean there could be a bonuses, you can name it any name. Okay, but when it comes to performance, performance has no relation to the length of service, frankly. Okay, if you don't perform or if anyone doesn't perform, then he will not be given any or a single penny from the performance. Okay, and in case of non-performance, you may be asked to leave. Okay. Uh, Second is market adjusted pay structure. Like for example, some companies which are very relatively new or not so cash rich, they can very well say that yes, your salary can be matched with the best in class, but only if you perform, only if you generate X INR of business. Okay, so that is a one way company try to match with the best in class of salaries. Okay, performance is again based on the broader industry comparison. There will be some surveys conducted by the company as well as independent agencies to see where my employee lies in comparison with the industry. Okay, and again bonus linked to performance. Okay. So, what are the typical components of total compensation? Okay. So, first, there are main two categories, okay, which are monitored by some external media and which is monitored by yourself. Okay. So, which are monitored by external can be assigned to some monetary numbers. Which are monitored by you cannot be assigned to any monetary numbers. Okay. So, monitored by an individual is known as intrinsic reward system. It's more about you feeling good about yourself. Okay, it's more about getting satisfied or feeling good about yourself. Okay, it's more like how you are part of a team, how you take a challenge. Okay, then recognition is something you will get if you do well, right? So nobody can force you to say that okay, you do it, we'll give you this, right? They can show that okay, if you do this, you will get it, but it is you who are supposed to take that action. Okay, so those are known as intrinsic reward system. So extrinsic reward is something administered by the HR or your senior or some other people, and which can be assigned a financial number to it. Okay. In case of extrinsic reward, there are direct compensation and indirect compensation. Okay. What is direct compensation? Is a base salary, performance based. So these are very specific to you. Okay. This will be specific to an individual. Okay. But while in case of indirect compensation, there will be something which will not come to your pocket, but you will be entitled for the benefit. Okay. For example, pension, saving, supplementary. It's not applicable in India, but in most of the developed countries, if somebody is unemployed, they will get a benefit of unemployment. So that is again an indirect compensation. Paid leave is indirect because if you don't take a leave, you will not be paid. Additionally, you will not be paid. Okay, so that's a indirect benefit. Maybe they will give you a lead travel allowance, so that's again indirect benefit. Only if you avail. Okay. Then there could be something miscellaneous like company will give you a, they will provide you a counseling benefit. There will be a counselor or there will be a crash for kids. So that is something indirect benefit. Okay. Any doubt or any question here? Okay. Okay. Now what are the factors on which a compensation can be decided? Okay. For all job, the individual knowledge, experience, what is the element of supervision required, physical and mental demand, and autonomy and decision making authority. So these are the 5 factors which are there are 5 factors. These are applicable for any job to decide a compensation. Okay, no matter, you go to a casual labor to president. So these are the 5 factors which will be counted for coming to the compensation. Okay, but when it comes to manufacturing, even an office job, there could be different categories in which the compensation will be based. For example, in case of customer service, the way in which you are interacting with the customer is the most important thing. Okay, so that could be one factor on which your the compensation will be decided. Okay, for example, if you go to any mobile service center, okay, it's a transactional relationship. Okay, the person may be handling 10,000 or maybe let's say 100 inquiries in a day. Okay, but if you go to some high-end, let's say a jewelry shop, okay, the individual might be handling only 3 to 5 customers in a day. Okay, so their quality of customer interaction will be a factor to be decided in compensation. In case of IT, ES or knowledge, this is most important thing is confidential information. The level of confidential information is used. Okay, so any idea nowadays what is the new area which is coming up in IT industry? Yes, I think day before yesterday there was a news that 500 employees were taken by the police because there was a confidentially breach, right? So amount of confidential data you are handling with your company or with your client is again definitely a factor to be considered in your compensation. Any idea in case of typical large IT company, what is the salary band for a chief risk officer? It will go in crores because he is handling so much sensitive data. Okay. The other aspect which comes for mid to senior management is consequence of error. Okay, because this is the cadre which is supposed to take care of some decisions. Okay, so which product to be sold, which area to be looked at, which investment to be made, right? If that goes wrong, what is the implication of that particular decision is again a factor to be considered in your compensation. More the risk, the compensation has to be high. Okay. In case of manufacturing and warehousing job, obviously safety and hazard. Okay, what kind of environment in which an individual will be working? Again, that's an important factor. Specialized equipment use. As sir was mentioning, in case of Thermax, they need a welder which is certified by the body. Okay, so that's a specialization. Okay, since he is a specialized welder, he is likely to get more salary than others. Okay, and working environment. So these are the factors on which a compensation can be derived. Okay, now let's look. Since we are all MBA guys, we won't be talking about something below. Okay, so let's look at what happens in case of manager and executive. So executive is somebody who is at higher level, and manager is somewhere at mid level. Okay. So for an executive, the the fixed salary will be a smaller percentage of pay. Okay. Let's say if he is earning some X amount, so his base salary will be somewhere like 2.3x or 0.4x. But while in case of manager, the the salary will be in higher percentage of your pay. That could be 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. While in case of executive, your annual incentive is larger percentage of your pay. Okay. For a president, his salary will be 10 lakhs, but he will be getting 90 lakhs as a bonus or variable pay. Okay. While in case of manager, obviously variable pay will be lesser. For executive, larger pay will be assigned to your long-term incentive. The reason being, the decision taken by the executive are actually shaping company's future. Okay. So today a senior management person is taking decision, the effect will be seen only after 3 to 4 years. You might have read the news about Vishal Sikka, right? So recently company has tied up his salary with the 2020 mission. Okay, that's a long term horizon, 3 to 5 years. Okay, but at a senior, let's say at a manager level, who is supposed to take a decision that, okay, should I perform this job today, tomorrow, or day after tomorrow? Okay, so for him, the long term incentive will not matter. For him, mid or short term incentive will matter. Okay, now in terms of healthcare benefit, retirement benefit, it's more or less common. Only the size will differ from pay scale to pay scale. The important thing about the executive is severance pay. Sorry, somebody had question. Okay. Any idea after Volkswagen scandal, what was the severance pay given to their president? How many of you have followed that particular thing, Volkswagen scandal? Any idea what was it? Any idea what was Volkswagen scandal was all about? Every engine will emit harmful gases. So their engines were emitting more than the prescribed limit, right? So with that, I think his name is Matthias Müller. He was asked to leave, but he was paid close to 30 million euro as a severance pay. Okay, much more than his salary. Okay, so that is something very much related to executive, but in case of manager, not prevalent. But in some cases, there is a severance pay given in case of forced detachment. Yeah. Perquisite is okay, I'll cover that. So in case of senior management, they will be given some additional benefit which are not given for general employees. For example, they will be given a car, or driver, or home to stay. So that comes as a perquisite. Okay. On the contrary, manager will get a fuel allowance. He will get what you can say, at the most food coupons, not beyond that. So that is something perquisite which company will pay for the senior management. Okay. So if you have to decide a compensation for an individual or a particular organization, so what should be objective? Okay. I mean the compensation, first of all, what time? First of all, it should reflect your organization strategy. Okay. So for example, a telecom company and an IT company cannot have same compensation strategy. Because most likely, if you look at the complete spectrum, the IT companies will have 90% of their employees as engineers. Okay, while in case of a telecom company, their 80% of employees will be non-engineers. Okay, those will be on-ground sales executive or customer care executive. So the strategy has to be entirely different with reference to your organization structure. Mirror the organization culture and values. Okay, so what your organization stands for. So that is most important thing. For example, why government pays are fixed? There is no variable pay because the government organizations is supposed to deliver to the masses, not a specific market. Okay. Other example could be a Microsoft or Google. Okay, what they say is we are a global companies. Okay, so for them the entire global salary or salary of any employee from any region has to be on the similar line. Okay. The second is support the business strategy. So what kind of business we are in and how do we want to grow. Okay, company which is on very growth phase most likely to give more variable pay than fixed pay. Company which is into matured stage is most likely to give a fixed pay more and lesser variable pay. Okay. So again, championing the human resource management strategy. This is more valid for IT companies. Okay. Any idea what is the reason behind this is so much successful over the years? And this was categorically mentioned by their chairman during a recent interview. They hire only freshers. Okay. They hire, I mean, if they hire 100 employees in a year, or much more than that, but 95% should be fresher. Reason is their salary levels are low. Second, they can be trained very easily. Okay. And the price they get or the amount they invoice to the customer is much higher than what they had to pay. Okay, that's a human resource strategy. Second is some companies don't want employees to stay more than the limit. Frankly, there are companies who expect employees to leave after 3 to 4 years. Okay, so that will be directly reflected to your. There are no benefit assigned to your length of employment. So likewise, the impact will be seen in the compensation structure. Again, fit environmental and regulatory pressures. So in India, you can hire and you can say somebody to leave your organization. But in case of China, it is not allowed. Once you get an employee on board, no matter what you do, you cannot ask employee to leave. Okay. So that is something regulatory pressure which you need to comply with. Okay, now how do we arrive at the compensation structure? Okay, so there will be a job valuation or then there should be a survey data. Okay, so the first two parameters are basically external to organization. So basically that will help us to derive a particular band in which our company salaries are typically present. Okay. Then we can identify different pay structure. Okay, whether we should have more fixed or more variable, something like that. And then we should decide a pay grade. Okay. Let's take an example of a manager, HR manager. Okay. So first of all, we need to understand what activities he is supposed to perform. Second is what activities he is supposed to perform and what is valuable to company. This next part is pay survey data. Okay, what my competitors are paying for that particular skill set. So that's a pay survey data which we get from the market. Based on that, we can decide, okay, for an HR manager, this is likely to be considered for a compensation. Okay, Then you decide based on your company policy or company strategy, if I have to pay him X amount, whether I should pay him X as a fixed salary or variable salary, what are the different elements I should consider in the compensation, and then you decide a pay grade. Okay. So more in any organization, if you are an engineer or senior engineer or HR manager, most likely two HR managers will not have same salary. Okay. So they will be bucketed in a band. There will be a band in which the same category employees will be paid. For example, you join as a somebody join as a fresher, he will be given as a package. Let's assume as a 3 lakhs package, and he will be designated as an engineer. Okay. It's obviously that after 1 year he won't be promoted, but we will have to give him salary in accordance with, at least with the increase in the prices, right? But his designation is not going to change, right? So we need to figure out a band in which an engineer will be categorized. So from 3 lakhs to 4 lakhs, no matter you have 3 years of experience, 4 years, you will be engineer. Okay. Then once you decide this, obviously it cannot be a lifetime, or let's say 10 years or 20 years. We have to continuously look at the market data and revise these ranges. Okay. And then compare this, once you get again fresh data from the market, compare that data with your existing range and decide a new range. Okay. That's how typically a compensation is decided or overall administered. Okay. In deciding compensation, there are certain things we need to look at: internal consistency, external competitiveness, employee contributions, and administration. We'll look at in detail. Okay, I think this is okay. Like external market. Okay. Now coming to internal consistency. So if there are, let's assume there are 2 employees of same skill set, same years of experience. Okay, they cannot be paid drastically different. Okay. So one of the objective of compensation management is they should come up to a band in which employee can be categorized, so that there is no internal discrepancy in the structure. Okay. Sometimes it might happen that your senior is getting paid less than what you get. There is a possibility. So there is definitely need to maintain a consistency or equity between the pay structures. Okay. So how do we achieve that? First of all, it should be according to your organization workflow. What organization most value has to be highest and least value has to be lowest. Okay, the pay band has to associate with the values. Then second is ensure fairness to the employees. It might happen that one person who has a good boss, he will get extremely good hike. One person who has a good, not so good boss, he will not get a good hike. So after 4 years, the difference will be so drastic that it's not comparable. Okay, so HR has a greater role in this case. Okay, direct employee behaviors towards the organizational objective. This is most likely to happen in case of R&D institute. Okay, where more R&D is happening. Okay, what will happen is my objective is do research in something which of my interest, but company is there to make money, right? So my objective has to link with the company objective. Okay. Okay, how do we achieve the internal consistency? One way is to do the seniority basis. Do is a COLA, that's a cost of living objective. There could be a across the board increase. You can say this year we will get everybody will get 10% hike, no matter your performance or non. And there could be a lump sum increase to make sure that we are trying to adjust the gap. Okay, there are some benefits of internal consistency. Right.